If you were to ask the standard American, hey, if during the time of colonialism by the white Europeans of the Americas, if they had also exiled a great majority of the Native American population, and then years later, the ones who got exiled got to return to their land, would you refer to those returning to their indigenous land as colonizers? If you were to ask that of the standard American, they would twitch their face and be like, "What? Of course not. That's ridiculous. They're just going back to where they belong. And that's just basic justice because, well, it was taken from them, so why should it not be returned to them?" And yet, some of these people who would respond this way, if you were to ask some of them about the story of Israel, the story of the Jewish people regaining sovereignty over their native land, of their ancestors, of their people, they will twitch their face and say, "Of course not. That is colonialism." That type of double standard and completely changing one's understanding of a situation in relation to the Jew is anti Semitism. Specifically, it can be understood from the lens of the scapegoat Jew. Because historically, that's what the Jewish people have been for humanity. That's why the core of anti Semitism is a shape shifting conspiracy theory that adapts to the time, whatever a society or a person or a group feels guilty for or feels powerless to or doesn't acknowledge about itself. It finds someone else outside of them to accuse of it. Most conveniently, it tends to be the Jewish people or the Jewish person. And it just gets shapeshifted and adapts to the time. So in this specific example, if you'll take the standard, mostly actually white and actually descended of colonizers, they will tend to be the ones accusing Israel as a so-called colonial force. They themselves will not get up and give their homes or demand their families and people to give their homes back to Native Americans. Or if we're in Australia to the Aboriginals, or if we're in New Zealand to the Maoris. No, no, but they will demand the Jew on the other side of the earth to do the same, which would be double standard if Israel was also a colonial entity, like most countries in the world, by the way. But to make matters weirder and more senseless, it's actually the opposite. Now, this is one example out of many, many, many. Why are we here? So first of all, if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Morgainne. I don't normally do this type of content. I focus on spiritual work and I do occult and divination like tarot, astrology, runes, anything I feel inspired for my seekers. However, anti-Semitism is the oldest, most insidious hate in history. And we can't really expand spiritually with our consciousness if our brain is tainted with the rot of ignorance and senseless hate. So to me, this is not just a mission as a Jew and as a born and raised Israeli or a Hebrew or an Israelite, a Zionist, however you want to name this rose. It's also a mission as a spiritual teacher. Because our spiritual evolution is connected to everything. And the first comment that I have on my channel, just for me being Israeli, that's all this person knows about me. And apparently they're my followers because only my subscribers can comment in this chat. So a subscriber of mine says, had no idea. Pity you truly. Grow some compassion. I need to grow some compassion because I was born and raised in a country. Let's lean into, I'm going to utilize it as a supposed question. Although you guys, whoever is here is welcome to ask anything that comes to your mind that you don't understand, that you heard, that you know or think you know about Israel, directly or indirectly. Maybe instead of insulting and dehumanizing like people like to do to us Jews, just engage in civil discourse and just ask a question and hear the answer. Otherwise, you're just a fundamentalist, and specifically in my case, a hater. Okay, so let's lead. Let's utilize Stephanie Pond remark. She had no idea I'm Israeli. She has pity over me now. Okay, well, thank you. Uh, 10 million Israelis, two-thirds of world Jews are Israelis, and so she pities us, and two-thirds of world Jews need to grow some compassion. That's lovely. I can't say I didn't expect some of these types of remarks, and I prepared myself for that because I know the ecosystem of our society now that is entrenched in hatred and in ignorance. I prepared myself, but that doesn't make it easy. But I am proud of myself for keeping my cool. So, um, let's lean with that to the narrative of Israel being the supposed big bad wolf, the evil of the world. Not the Jewish nation, just the Israeli nation, because that's different. Let's lean into that. Now let's think. Do you think Stephanie here would say that to a content creator she follows that she now finds are from Iran, Russia, Pakistan, North Korea, China, Cuba, Venezuela, Nigeria, Syria, any other of the plethora, dozens of countries who regularly, insidiously violate human rights? Do you think she would say that to me if I was Chinese, Russian, Nigerian, Syrian? No, but all bets are off with a Jew because maybe she really dislikes the government of Israel. Now, whether it's legitimate or not, that doesn't matter because she's not talking to the prime minister of Israel right now. She's talking to a person, a civilian. But when you round us up and consider us all to be a representation, like a standard Jew having a stand-up comedy on a stage somewhere in the US, a content creator on YouTube going live, you know, when you talk to us, random Jewish people, Israeli people, sorry, not Jew, Israeli, it's different, as if we are the government and express your contempt as if we are the government, whether the contempt is legitimate or not. That is, by definition, formally, rationally, anti Semitism. I actually would like to take the opportunity to also guide you towards the formal definition of anti-Semitism. I should have thought of it in advance, and I will link it after the live. I will link it in the description box to the formal definition by the IHRA, which is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And I'm sure Stephanie here really loves to invoke the Holocaust as if she cares about Jewish life at every chance she gets, while simultaneously vilifying two-thirds of world Jews, Israelis. That's If it wouldn't be so sad, it would be entertaining. So please, when you get a chance, check out the IHRA definition to anti-Semitism. It's adopted by most states in the US, many countries around the world, and it also goes into explanation about the connection of Israel to anti-Semitism. Does anybody else have anything else to say or a question? Because I have more that I can think of, but I prefer to give you the room. And Stephanie, if you want to go into detail, if you're still even here, on why it is that you pity me truly and why it is that I need to grow some compassion when all you know about me is that I'm from Israel, please enlighten me. Hey Chan, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining. Oh yeah, if you're trying to comment and you can't, that's because I made it only available for subscribers. So if you want to say something in the chat, I would really love to read and answer your question or address your remark. You're going to need to subscribe. That's it. Just press the subscribe button and then immediately we'll be able to chat. And if you want to unsubscribe afterwards, I won't, I'm not going to stop you and that's okay. But for the sake of this chat, you'll need to be a subscriber. Okay. So, hi Chan, welcome. Do you have a question? Sorry for blowing my nose to your face. And to be clear, the first comment that I had on this chat was anti-Semitism. She pities me for the nature of my existence. That's like imagine someone going on a black person's channel, live channel, and then I only just heard you until now. I didn't actually see you. Well, now that I find that I had no idea that you're black, well, I pity you truly. Grow some compassion. Well, no, no, no. It's not because they're black. It's because the things that they do, allegedly, of course. Um, Not really. My ex-boyfriend was Palestinian American. Well, I'm sure you may have heard some things from him or had some sort of impression made. And if not in relation to him, then just in general. Um, it could be anything from the smallest, like, and seemingly not, triggering, um, to the most intense and potentially triggering. I promise to keep my grace and dignity, and answer it no matter what. I will answer it. And not resent you for it. I don't hate Stephanie Pond. I wish her healing. I think it's very, very sad to be in that state of mind, of hate, ignorance, and delusion. It's really, really sad because she believes this is coming from a sense of moral superiority, right? I need to grow compassion. She pities me. It's moral superiority. Now, every single fascist and tyrant in the history of fascism and tyranny had the illusion of moral high ground. Now, sometimes you do have the moral high ground, okay? When you fight slavery because you want to liberate people from enslavement, that is objectively a moral high ground. However, if you're doing that in a place where so happens to there be no slavery at all, you're just fighting people, and then when you're asked why are you hurting these people who didn't do anything to hurt you, you're lying and saying that it's because they have slaves. Okay, if that was the case, and you check and you realize that they actually don't, that is if you bother checking, then maybe you'll find out. Then that's senseless hate with a diluted sense of moral superiority. Okay. Now, if she had the, I don't know, maybe courage to explain more and actually ask a constructive question, maybe I'd be able to address whatever it is she has in her mind, but she won't give a Jew that chance. Sorry, an Israeli. Which, by the way, let's imagine that it's completely separate. Let's imagine that it's not the only country for the Jewish people where there are 120 Christian countries, 57 Arab countries, 20 plus of them are Muslim, and only one Jewish country smaller than New Jersey. Now, let's imagine that that wasn't the case, that Israel wasn't associated with Jewish people. It's just another country with people. So hating on a group of people is okay. Like, I don't even need to explain the connection to Judaism and to the fact that it's anti-Semitism, specifically, specific hatred that is, you know, against a Jew. It's just hatred in and of itself already, even if it has nothing to do with the Jewish people. We're not supposed to discriminate against people for their nationality as well. And she knows this. She wouldn't do that to any other person. She wouldn't do that to any other person from any other country, no matter how that evil that country actually is. Okay, so I can continue just talking out of my own head, but I think it would be nicer if someone would say something. Don't be scared. As long as you don't say anything hateful and you just ask a question, um, Chan, how do you see Judaism as a religion versus ethnic identity? I agree with many Old Testament teachings which have sadly been forgotten by Christians. Okay, thank you for that question. So I'll just go into the explanation about Judaism in ways that it is an ethno religion. Okay, so if a Christian takes a blood test, it's not going to show that they're a Christian. If a Muslim takes a blood test, it's not going to show that they're a Muslim. If a Buddhist takes a blood test, and so on and so forth, it's not going to show that they are Buddhist. Um, if a Jew from birth, not because they converted, it's not about specifically the religion, but just a Jewish person born Jewish. If they take a blood test, it shows that they are Jewish because it is genetic, it is an ethnicity, it is a race. We are a people, a tribal people. You know, the 12 tribes of the Israelites from the Bible, from what you refer to as the Old Testament, is actually the Torah. Then, when it got translated by Christianity and had the sequel written to it, aka the New Testament, it was referred to in relation to that as the Old Testament. But the Jewish people, it's just our Torah, you know, the law of God. So the Bible is the Jewish Bible. It's originally written in Aramaic and Hebrew, which is the language of the Hebrews, the Jews. It was then got translated into Greek and Roman and English and many other languages. Of course, a lot, as you say, got lost in translation. So if you relate more to the teachings of the original Old Testament or the Torah more than you do to the New Testament, then maybe you're more Jewish in your affiliation when it comes to your belief system. But we started about 5,000 years ago in a land you may have heard of. It's called the Kingdom of Israel, as a people. It's an ethnicity. From then on, we were also slaves in Egypt for 400 years, and then we were also slave in Babylon, which you know today is Iraq, for a few decades. That was in the 5th century BC. The slavery in Egypt was 17th to 13th century BC, about 400 years. And our slavery in Babylon was for a few decades around the 5th century or 6th century BC. And we started as a tribe of desert people because the kingdom of Israel is where Israel is today. You know, the region is the Middle East, but you need to remember that the Middle East is relatively new in history. It's a part of the continent of Asia, but it only became the Middle East in the past 1400 years with Islamic conquests. It got Arabized and Islamized by Islam that is originally from what you know today as Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula which is also in the same continent of Asia. It got spread with, ironically enough, occupation and colonialism, and it took over about half of the continent. So now it's called the Middle East. So Israel of today, the state of Israel, is in the Middle East, but it was there, and it was called the Kingdom of Israel way before it was called the Middle East, way before there was Islam, way before there was Christianity, way before there was Buddhism. Right? So we were a people in the land of Israel 4 or 5 millennia ago. And from our ways of life, from our wisdom, from our beliefs, from the God of the Israelites that spoke to us, to my ancestors, developed the belief system of Judaism. So Judaism is incorporated with the land of Israel and with the peoplehood of the Jewish people. The Jewish people are the Israelites, are the Hebrews. It's just different names that I will, randomly use, but I'm referring to the same people. So it's embedded. It's almost like shamanism and Native American. Now, you don't have to be a Native American to practice shamanism, just like someone can convert to Judaism and practice the faith. And a Native American doesn't have to practice shamanism. Whether they practice it or not, they will still ethnically be a Native American, right? So it can be separated, but it also very intertwined because Judaism is a birth of our ways of life, of our language, of the God that spoke to us, which is the God that all the Abrahamic religions believe in, by the way. Christianity and Islam follow the same God. They've adopted the God of the Israelites as also their own, and basically wrote two different sequels. The New Testament in Christianity and the Quran in Islam are basically their own creative sequels to their understanding of the faith. But the structure is Judaism. If there is no Judaism, there is no Christianity. If there is no Judaism, there is no Islam. Both religions follow Israelites' prophets and the Torah and aspects of the Torah, and then they continued it, right? In different directions. So you can separate the two, but you can't really separate the two. Um, Israel is mentioned in the Torah, aka the Old Testament, and the Quran as well, dozens to hundreds of times, depending on which book we're talking about. And we are referred to as Bnei Israel, the children of Israel. We are the children of the land. Sometimes we're referred to as clay made of the soil of Israel. So it's not just religiously, although it's hard to kind of differentiate, but we are connected to the land with our faith and with our history. It is both our historic and present day home. So I hope that answers your question. Can you explain the relationship between Sheol and Hades? That's a great question. And what you slash Judaism believe happens after death. Okay, happy to answer that. I find that to be a wonderful question. But guys, I want to encourage you to also ask me questions about the modern state of Israel. From the wars to the relations with Palestinians to the demographic of Israel to the education system, anything, really anything. Just ask me whatever comes to your mind. Or whatever you see on TikTok that makes you really angry. All of it, just ask me instead of hating on me through the screen. That's just hysterical. Stephanie Pond, you know, you are an example of everything that is going so badly in this country. And you are a standard German in Nazi Germany. When you believe the worst about the Jews without verifying, that is anti-Semitism. And thank you for your pity, but to be honest, I pity you. So whatever you managed to gain from my teachings, I hope it was helpful for your spirit. Whatever you won't gain from here on, I hope you'll find it somewhere else. But I'm glad you won't be here to spew your hate at me. God bless you. So back to you, Achan, with your question about the Sheol and Hades. So the Sheol is what you know from the Greek mythology, aka Hades, as the underworld in Judaism. It's like you can call it hell or Helheim, but not exactly, because it's not a place where all the evil goes to for eternal condemnation. It's more like what you know from the Greek mythology as the underworld. It's a realm of condensity where you just experience an afterlife in a more condensed form. You could refer to it as suffering. You could refer to it as a school for you to learn or to regain your wisdom or to, kind of quote unquote serve your time if you've been a naughty soul. Um, and Hades in the Greek mythology is known to be the god of the underworld. Now, we don't have there's no Hades in Judaism. There's no god of the underworld that is separated from the god of the upper world. It's the same god, Elohim, that rules all realms, right? Be it the above world or the underworld, be it the kingdom of the living or Sheol. But in the Greek mythology adapted the Sheol from Judaism and kind of gave it wings and kind of made it and connected it with its own gods and its own because they really considered the planets as divine gods, right? Kind of like in astrology. So Hades was considered the god of the equivalent in the Greek mythology to the Sheol, the underworld. And that's pretty much it. You also know him from Roman mythology as Pluto. We talk about Pluto a lot, right, in astrology and on our channel. And Pluto rules the death card in tarot because the death card symbolizes the transition between life and death to life. The kingdom of the underworld or Sheol is that transition or that realm. Does that answer your question? The last point is what swayed me ideologically to Christianity. Jesus Christ is intended to serve as the archetype of death, eternal life, and resurrection. So I like that you brought up Jesus Christ because Jesus is just a name that was given to Yehoshua by the Roman Empire when it started constructing his teachings into a new religion that you know of today as Christianity. But Jesus, as you know him, was Yehoshua Minatzrat. He was a Jewish rabbi from the kingdom of Israel 2000 years ago, 2025 years ago. That's when we started counting from the Gregorian calendar, right? And he taught in Hebrew Judaism. He was an expert in the Torah. He constantly quoted from the Torah. His disciples were the Hebrew Israelites. This is, by the way, the time of Jesus in the kingdom of Israel, 2 centuries before a Roman emperor who conquered the kingdom of Israel renamed it, sorry, not renamed, but named it instead of Israel in an attempt to take away the connection and right of the Israelites to their land, the Jewish people to Judea. It was Judea and Israel. So when I say Judea or Israel, I'm referring to the same kingdom of Israel that was a united Judea and kingdom of Israel, okay? Where all the 12 tribes have lived. Two of them were in Judea, one of them the tribe of Judah, which is where Jesus is from, and then the other 10 in the kingdom of Israel. Later on became a united kingdom of Israel. But never mind that, when this Roman emperor in the 2nd century, in the year 138, named the land instead of Israel, Syria Palestina. Now, back then, there were no Palestinian people, okay, and Islam didn't exist at the time. He named it Palestina after a word in Hebrew, plisha, which means invasion. The Hebrews, a few centuries earlier, had people, now let's tie the knots, from Greece, from Crete, which is an island next to Greece, invade Israel. Now, they didn't know, the Israelites then didn't know who they, what they're called. They just knew that they invaded Israel and tried to take over it. So in story, every time they spoke about them, they referred to them as the Pershim, Philistim. So the Philistim that were actually Greeks who came and tried to invade Israel, but they were fought off and lost. Later on, when this Roman emperor wanted to celebrate his successful invasion of Israel, after the name of this ancient foe of the Israelites, named the land the invasion in Hebrew. It was as an insult for the Jews. And then 1900 years later, okay, with the British Mandate of Palestine, Land of Israel, that's the full name of Palestine prior to 1948, by the way. It wasn't just Palestine. It wasn't a sovereign country supposedly ruled by a Palestinian people. Everyone under the rule of the British Mandate at the time, Jews, Muslims, Christians, anybody, the British referred to us as the Palestinians. But it wasn't like we were a peoplehood, the Palestinians. And then 20 years later, in the 1960s, that's 20 years after 1948, the reestablishment of modern state of Israel, of Kingdom of Israel as the modern state of Israel. 20 years later, in the 1960s, the Arabs of the region, the ones who chose to not be a part of Israel, and that was a choice, they decided to call themselves Palestinians. This was led by Yasser Arafat, and it's a known movement. You can look it up. It's like everything I'm saying, you can look it up, by the way. They started calling themselves Palestinians in ways of um, separating themselves and distinguishing themselves from the Jewish people of the land and from Israel. And that is the story of the Palestinian people of today. They're originally Arabs, that's their ethnicity, right? And Muslims, that's their religion. But the Muslim world is very big. There are 2 billion Muslims in the world and 57 Arab countries and 20 plus Muslim countries. And every country has its own culture and nationality and past and different dialect. You know, it's a very big world. It's not everybody the same thing. So the Palestinians specifically as a nation, as a people, they're very young. They're 60 years old. Not to say that they can't have their own nation. It's just to say that your sovereignty and your decision to form a nation cannot come at the expense of the life or the existence of another. That's where the trouble began. Um, Ethereal Echoes, thank you for teaching us. You're most welcome. Ask me a question so I can teach you more about Israel today. And the war, anything, October 7th, ask me anything, please. All the hard questions. That's the point of me being here. Chan, interesting about the Greek invading Israel. I've been attending a Greek Orthodox parish as a Serbian American baptized into the Orthodox Church of America. I used to be a huge atheist. Wow, very interesting. Very cool. Uh, I did say Jewish, as you put it earlier, until I made sense of Christ. So you're a Messianic Jew, pretty much. Well, you're not a Jew as a ethnicity, but you believe in Judaism, but you also believe that Yeshua was the Messiah of the Jews. So where we differ, where the Jewish people differ from Christianity, is the Jewish people are like, okay, Christ was great. Yeshua was a really good teacher and a prophet and a healer. It's nothing against him. Maybe they would even follow him. Maybe they would even honor him and him and of himself as a prophet. The problem is him being referred to as God or the Son of God. Because according to Judaism, no man or woman can be God because that's the thing that leads to slavery. Judaism was the first religion that ideologically came to abolish slavery. Okay. Um, so you believe in Judaism, and as Jesus or as Yeshua is your Messiah. The Jewish people just don't believe that he was the Messiah. That's all. Um, that's perfectly fine, Achan. You are who you choose to be. Unless it's of course to do with our biology, and then we don't have that much freedom. Okay, we got to be also humble and be able to say my hair is dark. I can paint it blonde, right? But my hair as it is, I'm a brunette. So anyone listening care to ask a tough question? Think of something you recently saw on your social media to do with Israel that got you upset. I'm not saying that my answer will make you unupset. It might, but at least I'll be able to break it down for you properly. And then you make what you make of it. God, I'm so glad I brought a lot of fluids. I have tea here and water. I figured one of the comments will be at one point anti-Semitic and hateful, but I didn't think the very, very first. That's just something. I had no idea that you are black. I pity you. I had no idea that you are gay. I pity you. I had no idea that you were Jew. I pity Israeli, Zionist, a Jew. I'm gonna go, but I pity you. Fucking Nazis everywhere. That is Nazism, by the way. Being a standard German in Nazi Germany, finding out that their neighbor is a Jew. You didn't tell me you're a Jew? I pity you. Oh, it's different because that was in German and you said it in English. Okay. I'm giving this way too much power. I use humor to help, but I realize I'm also giving that way too much power. So I retract. I take it back. Guys, make something up. Stop being scared. Just ask a question. Uh, what are my thoughts regarding Netanyahu? So Netanyahu is one of the most prominent, powerful leaders of our time, of the 21st century, whether you like him or not. He is not a fascist. You can disagree with him on whatever. As a born and raised Israeli, before I came to the US, for a time, I was very active volunteering with promoting a political party that was completely against Netanyahu at the time and was running against him. And then in the person that I was working for their party actually became later on one of the prime ministers of Israel. His name is Yair Lapid. So politically, when it comes to the internalized affairs of Israel, when I was growing up there, I personally wasn't, voting for him. He wasn't my guy. But it's not because he is the so-called demonic devil. Some people refer to him as Nazi, which is disgusting. Um, alleged mass murderer, because he's not. I just disagreed with him politically on various other themes. And you'll ask every Israeli will tell you something completely different because it's a democracy and we all have our differing opinions and perspectives. In relation to this war, though, to October 7th and the ongoing war that has ensued since, I think he's doing what every other leader in Israel would do, which is be relentless in bringing back the hostages that are still held captive. 48 human beings, 20 of which are alive, are still held captive in dungeons underground against their will, and their families are burning with suffering for the past 2 years. Men, women, innocent, who did nothing but exist. Hamas invaded on October 7th Israel and took these people, more than 200 people, from their homes, from the streets, men, women, children, elderly, you name it, and kept them in underground terror tunnels and starved them and tortured them. That's what every single Israeli hostage that came back since um, has testified to. And there's also, mounting proof. Many of them came back looking like skeletons, like the Holocaust. And there are 48, 20 of which are still alive, human beings held captive. All Hamas has to do is let them go. And then the war will be over or a ceasefire will come into place. Um, but every leader, including Netanyahu, will not stop until the hostages are home because it's not like they're dead and there's nothing to do about it. Hamas chooses to hold on to them and they can choose to let go. They could have chosen not to take them in the first place. There was a ceasefire and a peace, the, the illusion of peace because it's an entire Nazi culture that hates us. Not every single Palestinian, but as a society, they're very similar to the German society of the 1930s and 1940s. And that's due to education. They can choose otherwise. They can choose not to hate. But so far, that has been their ongoing choice. And it's to do with being lied to by their leaders, and it's to do with religious insanity and fundamentalism and hatred and taking the Quran way too literal, which is something that Judaism and Christianity no longer does, where it matters, when it's to do with the life of others. So to go back to Netanyahu, he's doing that. He's also going after taking down Hamas all the way. There's no leaving Hamas in power, which is the very same as not leaving the Nazi society, Nazi Germany, the German Nazis during World War II. Can you imagine if you had left two strongholds of the Nazis? They would just continue doing what they're doing because they were embedded in an ideology of hate that wanted to eradicate a race. So are Hamas, and you don't need to be like um, uh, a brilliant PI to investigate and to learn this. This is their own stated goal, written goal. They've been acting upon it for decades with numerous suicide bombings and terror attacks and mass murdering of innocent Israelis for the purpose of murdering Jews. Their own um, their own charter describes that it's their stated goal to kill every single Jew on earth. Now they've revised it in I think it was in the 1990s or 2000 to fit the standard Western ear, but they kept acting upon it. If you read the original one from the 80s, that's what they mean. That's what they keep saying. And that's what they've been acting upon. And that's what they did on October 7th. And that's what they promised to do again and again and again if they can. So no leader in their right mind, including Netanyahu, can let a murderous, psychotic death cult organization be on our borders and butcher thousands of human lives again. And if anyone would expect their own leader in their own country to allow that to happen to your people, I would question your sanity. So, just like I would be with any leader in Israel, whoever they may be, I'm very happy with Netanyahu going after Hamas to eradicate them. Now, the Gazans, you know how there are stories about Germans who helped hide Jews and help Jews escape? Yeah, so far we didn't have even a single Gazan do that. Hamas is deeply embedded in the population. They have tunnels underneath hospitals, schools, in residential buildings. A big portion of the Gazan society knows where those tunnels are, knows where they're at. Some of them know where the hostages are kept. They can come forward and be like, hey, I want to help these innocent hostages and I want to help end this war because my people are suffering and your people are suffering and this is insane and I don't Hamas doesn't speak for me and I don't carry their ideology and I just want to help you retract your innocent civilians back home. Not a single one. So either they're so terrified of Hamas, although the Germans then were terrified of the Nazis if they wanted to help Jews. I mean, they would risk their own life to do so when they did. So, but okay, there's fear. Or there's resonance with the ideology. Let's not forget, although it was a long time ago and things have changed and the percentage have changed, of support has changed. But 20 years ago, Gaza elected Hamas, knowing that their aim is to eradicate every Jew and, of course, Israel. They elected them knowing that. And there were thousands celebrating in the streets on October 7th. I don't know if you've seen the cheers and the dancing and the spitting on the bodies of Israelis that were paraded on pickup trucks by Hamas that took them from Israel into the strip into Gaza. They ran after the trucks, they cheered, they spat on the body. You can see everything from October 7th, by the way. If you go on well, you can go anywhere online, but God, what's the name of this? Oh my God, I really know that. Um, I'll remember, but you just go online and ask to see raw footage from October 7th. You'll find it. I've seen all of it. I've seen the beheadings. I've seen the torching on fire. I've seen the little girls were raped with metal hoses. Kids had their feet axed, their eyes gouged. Women were tied to trees naked and axed into half. These are things you haven't seen from the times of the Middle Ages, of the medievals, and not even. These are things you can't even imagine. A toddler was put in an oven and was cooked to death while his mother was raped in front of it. These are things I don't even know how you imagine. And the Palestinians and Hamas who invaded October 7th on that day, who committed these crimes against humanity, had templates in their pockets, small ones, written by Yahya Sinwar, Hamas leader at the time that got assassinated by Israel, that describe in Arabic the best ways to torture a woman, the best way to torture a child, the best way to torture a man. Different ways, different methods. They had templates in their pockets. The purpose was not just to kill, which is bad enough in and of itself. It was to torture and make torment as much as possible. I don't think many people grasp what happened on that day and the historic meaning of that. It wasn't just the biggest massacre of Jewish life in one day since the Holocaust. It was the greatest expression of evil in ways that we couldn't even fathom. The normal human mind can't even imagine some of the things that I've seen with my eyes and footage that was done to my people. With glee, with joy, with celebration, with pride. They didn't hide any of it. That's the thing that makes me so amazed, where none of it is hidden. None of it is like a conspiracy theory. These are all things you can see and hear for yourself from their own mouths, by their own hands. and it's still a question somehow. That taught me October 7th, and since then has taught me how the Holocaust could happen, what it's like to live among standard Germans in Nazi Germany, how easy it is to make people evil. Standard people that otherwise you would never imagine. Like the Stephanie Pon and how she spoke to me. I bet if I was to be murdered by someone for being me, she'd be like, well, she was an Israeli. She wouldn't say she was a Jew. She wouldn't say that, but that's what she means. And if she's unintelligent enough to not know that that's what she means. Anyway, I digress, but back to your question with Netanyahu. So I'm very happy that he's going after Hamas, all of them, no matter where they are, whether they're in Gaza or in the West Bank or in Qatar, which, by the way, it's an enemy country. Qatar is an enemy country. And I'm happy to go in depth into that and break that down for you. Wherever they are, they should go after them. I'm happy that he's working relentlessly to bring back the hostages. I have some issues to do with internal affairs to do with him, but that's pretty much it. If you're worried about treatment of Palestinians, you don't know anything about war. Nothing. You haven't experienced one and you haven't truly studied one. Try to think for yourself for a second and try to name another country outside of Israel that has thrown leaflets by the hundreds of thousands from the air to warn civilians to flee a place it's about to bomb. Tell me someone who wants to commit a genocide against the people that warns the people that, a bomb is coming. Like, is there not even like the slightest basic critical thinking in this? Sending texts. Hey, you need to flee this place because because there's a Hamas stronghold there and we're about to attack there. So take your family, take your people, leave. Safe corridors, humanitarian tents, bringing soldiers in by foot. We've lost 900 plus soldiers since this war started. These are 18 to 20-year-olds mostly. All Israelis. It's mandatory service. We can't afford to have people choose whether they want to serve or not. We're only 8 million Jews over there in Israel. There are billions of enemies surrounding us, literally. So we don't have that privilege. So literally 18 to 20-year-olds, nearly 1,000 since October 7th, on top of all the victims of October 7th. Do you think if Netanyahu had wanted to wipe out the entire Gaza Strip and the entire Palestinian people, that he wouldn't just, I don't know, instead of losing lives of our own people, just throw a bomb? If the aim was genocide, this would be done on October 8th, the press of a button. And the fact that people don't, and how much money does it cost to Israel? How much manpower? How much suffering to be for 2 years at war for the Israeli people and the Israeli government? It's a fucking nightmare. It's an active war. We run to shelter there as well from rockets. Who would have bothered to go all through that to just if they can just finish it up in a day? No, the purpose is to save as much human life as possible. Yes, on the other side. Who else? Who else? What other country in time of war fed the people of their enemy? Can you name one? You can't. So Israel breaks every glass ceiling to do with morals, to do with war, that no other countries has ever done, nor can. But instead of being like, oh my God, look what they're doing, they're feeding their enemy. Oh my God, they're warning their civilians that, but their enemy will hear too and will be able to prepare, and then the mission won't go as planned. What? Whoever does that, that's incredible. Instead of like being amazed at that, some people's brains are so wired to hate the Jewish people, subconsciously even. It makes sense for them to be like, how come they didn't give them even more food? How come they didn't feed them even more? How come they're fighting for their life so that Hamas doesn't repeat October 7th again and again and again and again? How come? They're not the good kind of Jew. The good kind of Jew rolls over and plays dead, or actually lets you kill them. The good kind of Jew gives themselves to the Nazis. But they're not the good kind of Jew. They're the bad kind, the kind that fights to live, the kind of fights to protect their loved ones. Never mind that it's also the kind that feeds their enemy, and it's unheard of, that warns their enemy, and it's unheard of. This type of insanity and lack of sense only comes when your brain is just really, really um, taken by, I don't know, social media, whoever is behind those social media contents. There's a lot to go into there. I'm happy to answer that if anyone has a question on that. Anyway, I don't know if it answered your question about Netanyahu, but that's the most I can give or that I can think of. Mm. By the way, did you know the combatant versus civilian ratio? The standard one in any warfare, in most warfares in the West in the recent years? 9 to 1. For every one combatant or terrorist, 9 innocent civilians. That's the average of warfare. 9 innocents versus one guilty who die at war. No one refers to those as genocide. Israel's ratio is 1 to 1. For every combatant, for every Hamas terrorist, one innocent person. Now, just to be clear, every life is sacred, and every innocent person lost unrightfully is horrid. But you got to zoom out because war is always ugly. You're not going to find a war that is okay. There's no such thing as an okay war. There's no such thing as a fun war. There's no such thing as a war where people don't die. Then it's not a war. Okay. So if you look at things from the understanding of, okay, we're at war, having a 1 to 1 ratio of combatant versus civilian is a miracle. 9 times better than any other army historically. These armies were not accused of trying to purposefully hurt innocent people. But the Jewish nation, who does 9 times better than anybody else, is somehow, it's just coincidental that the word genocide was invented to describe what happened to the Jews in the Holocaust, and that word did not exist before that. It just so happens that the Jews suffered the greatest genocide in history. There were other genocides, of course. There are still ongoing ones that people completely ignore. Imagine accusing Black Americans of being slave owners when they're not, when they're actually actively fighting to liberate people, other people from slavery. I mean, that would not be racist in your eyes? Anyone who accuses the Jewish nation, aka Israel, of committing a genocide when it's not, if you just look at the numbers don't lie. Anti-Semites do, propaganda does, numbers do not. But if you actually bother to learn and you recognize the UK just concluded that there's no genocide going on there. But Morgainne, you don't understand. There was this group of genocide experts that said that they are. Okay, that group, no one heard of it before that. All you need to have is $30 to pay membership fee, and you're a part of that group of experts. Did you know that? Try. They tried it. Go on their website and apply. $30. I mean, they probably took it down by now because it was exposed, but and more than 70% of them refused to vote in that because they're like, well, I'm not qualified. I just paid $30 to be a part of this shit. People with a brain. But then less of almost 30% were like, yeah, I'll vote. There wasn't even a discussion, just a vote. Who cares? That's not a group that is valid in any way, shape, or form. But media outlets that want to feed the people with the blood that they want, and they want Jewish blood because people love to hear about the bad Jew. They just go with it without even verifying because journalism has died in the West. But when people actually investigate properly and they have the tools and the knowledge, they're like, oh no, there's actually no genocide going on. That's pretty literally the opposite. It's war, it sucks, people die, it's horrid. Of course. But let's be reminded of World War II, where the Allies bombed the shit out of Nazi Germany and Nazi Europe. 2 million Germans died. Everything was flattened. Buildings, everything. And in America, there was those who came out to the streets with signs that say, "Why bomb Hitler? Hitler didn't hurt us." In retrospect, does that sound sane to you? Well, the people today out on the streets, the supposed peace protesters, it's just anti-Semitism. It's just good old anti-Semitism with just yet another costume. There's always a costume. Hitler claimed he wasn't killing the Jews because we're Jewish. It was because of the things we do. And it's always lies. It's one thing if it was true. It's lies. Always turns out to be lies. He was claiming that we're taking over the world as he was actively taking over the world. Okay? Islamists claim that we're colonizers, where they themselves colonized half of Asia and all of northern Africa in the past 1400 years and actively are trying to colonize Israel and are colonizing the West now with brainwashing, aka education, funded by your friendly country, Qatar. Any other question about anything I said or something different to do with Israel or this war or anything? Ah, my bangs. They're so long. I need to trim them. Trim, trim. The Palestinians who don't believe in the horrid acts of Hamas, who managed to escape, speak against them. Follow Musab Hassan Youssef. Follow Bassem Eid. Um, this is just from the top of my head, but they're not there anymore. They're certainly not acting like victims of a war that they started and have voted for. Oh my God, we tried to kill all of the Jewish people again and we failed and now we're facing the consequences. Oh my God, the only people who are innocent there are children. Truly. The children. They didn't have a say in that. It's the sins of their parents and of their leaders. That's the fault of this horror. The sins of their parents and their leaders. Consequences for their actions. Parents, fathers eat rot, and the teeth of their children become dark. It's a phrase in Hebrew. Yeah, children pay the price of the stupidity of their parents and of their leaders. Is that new for us in the world, in humanity? Is that okay? Is it fun? No. But that's the reason to their suffering, which I wish would end, but that's the reason. Not Israel is the big bad wolf. Okay, we're an hour in. I feel like I said a lot. I'm happy to say more. There's so much to say. Um, but is there anything that I said that you guys want me to elaborate on, break down more, give you more information? Everything I said, you can verify, you can check. Maybe not on BBC, by the way. It was not investigated by the UK government for supporting terrorism because they give 400,000 pounds to Hamas. Did you know that? BBC, one of the greatest propaganda machines in the past two decades. Completely wrecked British society. Follow Israeli content creators, follow Jewish content creators. Don't be the person who doesn't believe it when a black person is telling them you need to hear it from a white person. Oh, I don't want to listen, I don't want to hear it from an Israeli. I want to hear it from someone else. No, hear it from the Israeli, because there are the people who are there, who have suffered, who have the lived experience, and who can tell you truly. A talking head on television that wants you to think certain things because Qatar is paying them to is not your teacher. Ethereal echoes, that explains a lot. Which one? Which one specifically? I said so much, but I'm glad that whatever I said explains a lot. And Whew. I really want to utilize this opportunity because I don't do these types of lives a lot. I do lives, but like, tarot reading and stuff like that. And I really want to make the best of this. So please think of questions. Think what someone else might ask. For the people who are missing this live and will see it as a recording, try to think what would someone else might ask. Um, and then ask. Trying to think if there's something else I want to say. Oh, the narrative given by the BBC. Yeah. Same with MSNBC, New York Times. Oh my God, New York. So, how many of you have seen on the New York Times the picture of the poor child? Um, the very artistic picture of a mother holding her child, Palestinian child, and he looks terrible. He looks like a skeleton, and thought to yourself, "Oh my God, it's so terrible." And the article described it as if he's being starved by Israel. Oh, the famine. We're going to talk about that. Okay. So this kid has cerebral palsy, which is a rare muscular disorder, and it's a terrible, terrible illness. And I wish him health and well-being and his mother. It's terrible to see. It's very sad. However, he is not starving. That's what the disease does. I've seen the original photos, both of the mother and of his sibling, looking fine, certainly not starved. And you have markets all over Gaza, and you have Hamas is selling all the aid in the black market with a lot more, a lot more expensive. But there's no famine there. Hamas is hijacking the food, so it creates difficulty in nutrition, but it's not Israel starving. So that picture by the New York Times, that's not like something new. There have been countless of images of children who are sick. There was one kid with a different type of illness that does something similar, also a muscular disease, who was actually flown by Israel to Italy to get treatment. And he looks like a skeleton. But media outlets ran it as if another kid starved by Israel. You know who are starving in Israel? And not in Israel. You know who are starved? 2.3 million children in Yemen. And when you see images of these children, follow me on She Who Runs with the Wolves on Instagram. I share so much over there. You'll have all the information you could possibly think of today or at any time. Just go to She Who Runs with the Wolves on Instagram. I have the Existential Shift Instagram, and I have the She Who Runs with the Wolves. Go to She Who Runs with the Wolves for information about that. So he was circulated across media outlets as if he's starved by Israel. You have actually starved children in Yemen and many other places. 2.3 million in Yemen. Does anybody talk about them? Does anybody care? When you see an image of a child held by his mother is also she also looks like a skeleton because she is actually starved. If a population is starved, it's not just the child and the parents are fine. That's not how it works. If the parents look fine and the child is looking starved, you want to ask yourself, where does the food come from for the parents to eat? And if the parent has food enough to eat to not look like a skeleton, are they depriving their child? Like that's the question. That's the kind of questions I want my seekers to start asking. Like have critical thinking. If you see a picture of a child that looks like a skeleton, right? And then, but he's held by his mother, and maybe she's even overweight. Maybe she looks fine, or maybe even. And I've seen many pictures like that of women, evidently large, with their supposedly starved child that turns out to actually be sick with something else. Do you not think to yourself, why is this mother fine and the child isn't? Or maybe this mother is starving the kid because she obviously has food. That's not how famine looks like. There's no fat people in famine. Guys, I get that Americans do not know what hunger is. Not any living American. There is no problem of starvation in America. There's a problem of obesity. Okay, you guys have no idea. There is no such thing as overweight people in a population that is being starved. Look at the images of the actual hostages that were released by Hamas. One of the hostages, Abiatar David, is on video digging his own grave in a tunnel underground. He looks like a skeleton. He looks like an actual Holocaust survivor. Have you seen him? Did you see him circulate in your TikTok or in any of the news channels that you watch? Follow me on She Who Runs with the Wolves. I share all of it. And I share so many other content creators and channels and profiles that give you that information so it can open a door to many other doors for you. I want you to start exercising critical thinking when you look at the news and you look at the papers, because that's how German society for 20 years, what entire continent was just suddenly okay with putting 6 million Jewish people in gas chambers and in large ovens. No, the brain was being rotted consistently, day after day, year after year, for 2 decades by Nazi propaganda in the papers, in academia, on the radio. It was all the bad Jew, the bad. Now all you see is the bad Israeli, the bad Israeli, the bad Israeli. And then when we're killed, you're like, oh, well, yeah, it's sad, but didn't happen in a vacuum. You're not special. Literally every anti-Semite throughout history, that's how it worked. That's how it worked. So in the past 2 decades, you have academia, billions of dollars from Qatar paid to all elite universities. It's all exposed now, and Congress has made a big circus out of it. You can go and watch all the hearings and the questionings of the deans of universities, etc. You can see it all. All you have to do is want. If you have such a formed opinion, but you haven't done all of these things, you want to ask yourself why it was so easy for you to form such a negative, firm opinion about the Jews, sorry, Israelis, sorry, the Zionists, sorry, the Jews, without you having going and investigating. Because believing the worst about the Jews without verifying is anti-Semitism. And I need you to ask that of yourself. You don't have to acknowledge that in front of me. You don't have to admit it to anybody, but you want to sit with yourself, ask yourself, and make a change. You watch congressional hearings all the time. Good. Look up for the college universities, elite universities on anti-Semitism. Fascinating to see these deans squirm in their seats. It reminded me of the Nazi hearings, the way they squirm and the nonsense that come out of their mouth. Okay, anybody else has another question? What was I started saying? Did I start saying something and I didn't continue it? If you guys want to remind me if I start talking about something and I make my point or finish it up. Oh, starvation. Okay. The only country that gives food to their enemy is somehow starving them. Okay. Do you know what it requires for a population to be formally considered starved or under famine? You need to have formally 30% of the population needs to be malnourished, like starving. 30%, an average of 1 in 3. For that to be for anyone to even begin to consider that as starvation. In Gaza, you have 15%, that's half, 15% of malnourishment. And it's not because of Israel, it's because Hamas hijacks all the aid. The food is there. 2 tons of food entered the strip since October 7th, nearly 2 years now. 2 tons. There are 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. That means a ton of food for each Palestinian. That's enough to feed everybody, and more than that. That's more food than what they had before that. It has nothing to do with Israel. They had their sovereignty before that. There was no Israel in Gaza before that. Okay, Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005, took the Jewish graves with them. The Jewish bodies dug them from the earth, from the soil to take them out. That's how deep the ethnic cleansing of that the Palestinians desired. That they didn't want even the bones of a Jew in their land. That's how deep. That's how deeply hateful the population was then, and still, otherwise they wouldn't be in this position. It's not to say that I believe that anybody deserves to die horribly because of that. I think people need re-education, but you can't be surprised that that's the cause, that that's the effect of the cause. When you want to eradicate a people, you end up suffering from violence. My seekers believe in karma and cause and effect, or I think you do, or some of you do. So the 15% that is malnourished there, even them, and it's still not yet famine because it's not 30%, even them, it's because of their own leadership. So, okay, you can talk about the malnourishment, you can talk about the difficulty, but you can't abuse it to spread blood libel against the Jewish nation as if it's starving children. In the medieval, the Catholic Church said that we supposedly that the Jewish people will drink Christian babies' blood and make matzah with it. Sound ridiculous now, but people believed it. Truly, mass the mass population believed it. And then the Germans would say that we allegedly kidnapped German children and forced them to being Jewish. That's also was a nonsense and wasn't true. But you think the German society bothered checking? No, they told them that on the news. But they're like children weren't actually missing. If they were, it had nothing to do with the Jews. And today they tell you that the Jewish people, sorry, the Israeli people, sorry, that Israel is starving Palestinian children. But if you actually look at the data and look at the facts on the ground, it's actually feeding them. It would be kind to feed anyone that isn't part of your country at the expense of your taxpayers. Most certainly if it's an enemy that seeks to eradicate you. That's like fucking saintly. And yet accused of starvation. This you can't make this shit up. I did not imagine in my life to see that mass hysteria, stupidity and ignorance and hatred against my people ever again. I thought it was behind us. I thought it was in documentaries and in the past. I thought that it was still in the Middle East and needs to be worked on, but never in the West. But how easy it is. I want my seeker there to think, how much do you care about your mind being truly free, regardless of Israel in general? How much do you care about your mind being truly free? Pick a topic, hopefully this, because I care about it, but pick whatever topic if you don't want it to be this, and really go into it. Something that you have a firm opinion on, and then dive deep into it. Challenge your mind. You're on a spiritual quest, you're on a spiritual journey. You can't be imprisoned by your brain, by your tribal brain that just wants to please the person in front of you, telling you who to hate. Don't let anybody tell you who to hate, ever, ever, no matter who. My people, not my people, any people. Don't let anyone ever tell you who to hate. Please. Okay, anybody has a question or are we going to move on? I only had very few questions. I don't know what's going on, but at least I had a lot to say from my own. So hopefully it was helpful for anyone who didn't get to. You can ask me if there was something recently you saw in the news that really bothered you and you're like, oh my God, that's horrible. Ask me about it. I'm not going to be mad at you. You saw it on the news. It's not your fault. Ask me. If you ask the question, then that's already impressive in and of itself. But yeah, I guess maybe another time or in the comment section because it's getting a little late and I've already now I realize I've been here over an hour now. So okay, I'm just gonna take a few sips of my tea. If a question will enter, I will answer it. If not, I'm gonna part ways with you for today. And say thank you for the time that you've been here. Mm. Okay. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Whoever has watched this video and lasted this far, I'm your fan because you represent everything that is good in the world. Because you're willing to hear and learn and expand. So thank you for that. Stay magic, stay true, stay free. I love you, and I'm Ciao.